So, the first evidence I want to cover with you guys this afternoon on how we know we can trust the Bible is prophecy, fulfilled prophecy. Now, it's one thing for anybody just to say, hey, this is what's going to happen in the future, but it's a whole other thing what you guys say if it actually took place, like somebody said. You're like, whoa, what's up with this? So we're going to look at some prophecies. Fulfilled prophecy is something, catch this, that sets the Bible apart from every other religious book. Now, there are about 26 major books there in the world that people would say, hey, this is divine. Okay, it's been inspired by a deity. Now, some of these books, the Vedas, the Vedic, and so on, you might recognize some of these books, Muslims with the Quran, the Book of Mormon. You guys recognize any of these? A lot of writings out there. A lot of different religions in the world that say, hey, we got it. The book we have, this is from the true God. Well, out of these 26 books, none of them, and I want you to catch this, none of them, not a single one, contains any specific fulfilled prophecy. How many of you guys knew that? It's pretty crazy. So, the Bible, however, has hundreds of specific, detailed prophecies that were written hundreds of years before their fulfillment. In fact, 27% of the Bible, so almost a third of the Bible, contains what? Predictive prophecy. When it was written, it was predictive prophecy at that time. So, the authors of the Bible, they did not just predict some vague things like Nostradamus or Gene Dixon, who, by the way, have been proven wrong over and over and over again. The Bible, however, there's very specific Old Testament prophecies concerning the Messiah who was to come. We're told in the Scriptures that he would be born of the seed of Abraham. Did you guys say that's pretty specific? You betcha. We're also told that he'd be of the tribe of Judah. We're talking about Jesus. Prophecies before he was born, 2,000 years ago. These were prophesied. Also, we're told in 2 Samuel he'd be of the house of David, that he would be born in Bethlehem, that he would come while the temple was still standing. Is the temple standing today in Israel? No. For most of the history of mankind, the temple has not been there. So Jesus to show up during that's a specific prophecy, guys. We're also told that he would be born of a virgin, that he'd perform miracles. We were told that he'd be rejected by his own people. We were also told that the time in which he would come. If you study prophecy and you're a student of the Bible, you get into Daniel chapter 9, the exact day was given. You guys remember when Jesus wept before the triumphal entry? He wept over Jerusalem. If they only would have read, they would have known the day of their visitation. They would have known the exact time. But they don't read. And that's the problem today. Best-selling book. How many of you guys grew up with a Bible in your home, but never took the time to pick it up and actually read it? That's the reality today in our society. Everyone has a Bible, but no one takes the time to read it. If we would just read. And you guys know that there were 310 specific prophecies about Jesus' first coming. Fulfilled them to a T. Every single one of them. There's 8 times that amount of prophecies concerning his second coming. We are living in the last days, but people do not read their Bibles, and churches are not teaching the Scriptures, that the church doesn't even have a clue. Another prophecy that we're told is how he would die. You can read Psalm 22. It talks about a crucifixion. Do you guys know that the Persians, the Romans, hadn't even invented crucifixion yet? That was prophesied 500 years before, but you read that description of how he was going to die, it's the crucifixion. We also know that he'd rise from the dead. That was prophesied. So all these prophecies, they were fulfilled. Now, the skeptics may say maybe Christians inserted those prophecies back into the Old Testament after Jesus lived. Well, there's not a chance. And how do we know that? Because today there exists manuscript copies of the Old Testament that predate the time of Christ's birth. These ancient copies of the Old Testament, they date back to the 3rd century BC, verifying that the prophecies concerning Jesus were already in place. In 1947, there was a shepherd boy taking care of his daddy's sheep in Paran, and there, northwest of the Dead Sea, amazing discovery was made. He went looking for a lost sheep, Okay? Here's a map of Israel. Here's Qumran. You see this little cave here, guys? Up on this hillside, this little guy crawled up into this cave. And in there, he found a collection of these ancient manuscript copies of the Old Testament. Now, these scrolls have been hidden in the caves for over 2,000 years. Now, here's a view inside the cave looking out. Up on the top there, that's the Dead Sea right there. These scrolls, they're known as the Dead Sea Scrolls. How many of you guys have heard of those before?
Oh, yeah.
They were just in Milwaukee this last year. They're preserved. They have these special settings to keep them preserved so they don't fall apart. They're so old. But they've been cruising around the world. It's the greatest find in modern history. And it validates these things. And how do we know that these scrolls predate the time of Christ? Well, here's some of the containers that they found. They're able to look at that and date those. Also, there's different scrolls. The book of Isaiah was found from there. It dates back to around 100 BC, so 100 years before Jesus ever was born. Now, it's manuscript evidence like this that proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that the Old Testament and its many prophecies concerning the Messiah was finished long before Jesus was ever even born. And you guys know that the Dead Sea Scrolls, they found every book of the Old Testament in there, except for the book of Esther, just one book, Esther. And Esther means hidden things. It's the only book that doesn't have God mentioned in it. If you dig into the book, it's crazy. Anyways, skeptics might ask, well, how do they know that the Dead Sea Scrolls date back before Christ? Well, scholars have determined the age of it by examining the different pottery that the manuscripts were found in. There's different weave patterns, okay, that were used at different times in history. Can tell what time it was written upon. The forms of the character. Okay, here's one of the manuscripts. Okay, they can look at different characters, how they spell words. Also, the coins that were found in there. The coins that they have were they were minted between 135 BC and 9 BC. Also, carbon-14 dating. The University of Chicago did that on the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they all date back before the time of Christ. Well, the skeptics say perhaps Jesus was not the Messiah, but accidentally or even deliberately set out to fulfill these prophecies. Think about this, guys. First of all, I don't think anybody would deliberately set out to live a short life and then die upon a cross. Would you do that? No way, okay? So, second thing, I think it's impossible for a man to deliberately choose the lineage in which he'd be born into, the time period in which he would be born into, and the city into which he would be born. So, was the fulfillment of these prophecies an accident? No way. There's a mathematician by the name of Peter Stoner. He wrote a book back in '63 called Science Speaks. And he figured out the mathematical probability of one man just for fulfilling 8 of the prophecies that Jesus laid out. And here's what it is. 1 chance in 10 to the 17th power. You guys understand? It's impossible unless Jesus really is who he said he was. And God really can tell the future. And the Bible is right. Now, I want you guys to think about the probability of that. Say you had a tile that was 1 inch by 1.5. Okay? We cover the entire planet, the whole surface of it. And we have you go out in a plane, we blindfold you, say, hey, drop me here somewhere in the world. The probability would be the entire world covered with those little bitty tiles, and we only have one color. You understand the probability there of you picking that one color. So is this by chance? You guys understand why it's so cool that the scriptures contain prophecy? The world's huge. In fact, these prophecies and hundreds of others have been fulfilled, even though they were spoken hundreds and even thousands of years before their fulfillment. This is very strong evidence that God, who is all-knowing and all-powerful, orchestrated the Bible's completion. So it's no wonder we don't see any fulfilled prophecy in any other religious writings. In Isaiah 46, verse 9 and 10, you guys should write this down, because this is where God lays claim to being God. He says, I am God, and there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times things that are not yet done. And he goes on to challenge other gods. If your God, tell the future. Only he can do it. You understand that? In every book in the Bible, there's prophecy. Now, a great book, if you guys are into prophecy, Dr. John Wolver, he wrote a book, Every Prophecy of the Bible. He goes over 1,000 different prophecies that have been fulfilled in the Scriptures. I encourage you to get that. So, it's the first evidence we're going to look at